The 2025 rookie running back class has completely shaken Dynasty running back rankings to its core. In my top 10 rankings, I have 4 rookies. In my top 20, there are 6. So it's time to give you some updated Dynasty running back rankings, starting with tier number 1. Funnily enough, this tier actually hasn't changed at all from pre-draft, but just to recap, we've got Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Ashton Jeanty. With those top 2 names, we're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs. Last year, RB1 overall finish, the RB2 in points per game at 21.3 points per game. For Bijan Robinson, RB3 overall finish, RB3 in points per game, over 20 points per game as well. You know, kind of right there with Saquon Barkley, those 2 names. Top 15 first round draft capital for these guys. They have proven it. And now adding to the list, we're adding Ashton Jeanty. We know how good round 1 hit rate is for a running back, 86%. But what if we get a little bit more specific and look at just running backs who were taken top 10? Because that is serious investment from an NFL team to take a running back top 10. And obviously that's what the Raiders did. Here are the running backs drafted top 10 since 2014. All right, we're talking Ashton Jeanty, right? But Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, CMC, Zeke Elliott, and Todd Gurley. A 100% hit rate. That's because guys with top 10 draft capital, you build your entire offense around them. They are fed into the ground. Let's look at the touches per game for those guys who have been drafted top 10. Bijan, and by the way, as a rookie, Bijan had 17.6 touches per game as a rookie. Shout out to Arthur Smith. Saquon Barkley at almost 24. Leonard Fournette over 24. Christian McCaffrey at about 15. I'll explain in a second. Zeke Elliott at 24 and Todd Gurley just under 20. On average, those running backs since 2014 drafted top 10 averaged almost 21 total touches per game. The only reason CMC had a smaller workload compared to the rest, he had to compete in his rookie season with Cam Newton and Jonathan Stewart for touches. I mean, Jeanty will have no competition whatsoever as a rookie. He should dominate this backfield in year 1. He would be a historical outlier if he doesn't hit big time for fantasy football. All right, in tier 2, we have 2 names. Saquon Barkley. Look, what is there to say about Saquon Barkley at this point? Over 2,000 yards rushing last year, RB1 in points per game, 22.2 points per game. He was fantastic, league winner, one of the best players in fantasy football. Then he gets the contract extension. There's not much to say other than he's just going to keep scoring in fantasy points. Right after that, the other name is Omarion Hampton. Perfect system for Omarion Hampton landing in LA. Yes, Najee Harris is going to be annoying to start the year, but we have a reliable hit rate historically for those round 1 running backs, 86%. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm expecting a Josh Jacobs rookie season for Omarion Hampton. Remember what Josh Jacobs did for the Las Vegas Raiders back when he was a rookie? I think we'll see similar type of usage, but we'll see Omarion's usage kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the year. I would not be surprised if people freak out week 1 when Najee Harris is a little bit more involved than they want him to be, but these are dynasty rankings, so we'll put him right there with Saquon Barkley. All right, tier 3. Let's talk about it. Travion Henderson, Quinn Judkins, those 2 Ohio State running backs land in my top 7. I see Judkins just completely dominating the backfield in Cleveland, by the way. I know Jerome Ford is there. I know they drafted Dylan Sampson. I think this man is going to touch the ball about 300 times in Cleveland. And Henderson, I know Ramondre Stevenson is there, but the reality is he's just too damn good to keep off the field. Even in passing downs, you got to keep him there. He's great in pass protection. He's going to be the most dynamic, explosive player they probably have on their entire offense. I would not be shocked if they just use him in an incredibly different amount of ways, kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs with Detroit, right? So very excited to see those 2 guys. They've got great hit rates, 71% for round 2 running backs. We've got 2 other names in here, and they're kind of tied, my 8A and my 8B. And again, my rankings are fluid. I value all these guys very similarly. So when they're in a tier, they're all bucketed values, right? I don't care how you prefer to rank these names. They're just in a bucket of value. I would value them very closely, right? But let's talk Bucky Irving firstly. He dominated as a rookie, had one of the better rookie seasons we've seen in a long time for a running back. If you look at running backs in 2024 with at least 100 rushing attempts, he ranked 4th in yards per carry, 7th in PFF grade, number 1 in yards after contact per attempt, which is incredible. We love seeing that lemons to lemonade type of running back. Bucky is the definition of that. He was 9th in missed tackles forced, despite sharing a backfield with Rachaad White, 5th in breakaway percentage, and 4th in yards per route run. He was great on the ground and in the air, and he completely changed the rushing attack for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay had the biggest single season increase in team rushing yards in the Super Bowl era, from 1,500 yards to 2,500, from 3.4 yards per carry to 5.2. Bucky was dominant for this team. He will continue to be dominant in year number 2. And then tied with Bucky is Devon Achane. Genuinely, he had a shot to finish as the RB1 in 2024. That was until Tua went down. If you look at the games in split on the left, that is with Tua. On the right, out of the split, is without Tua. He was averaging almost 23 points per game with Tua. And more importantly, the target share. He had 6.6 targets per game with Tua, 2.3 without him. The receiving yards are drastically down, about 38 receiving yards. With Tua, he was on pace for 113 targets on a 17-game season. That's ridiculous. It would have been the number 1 targeted running back in fantasy football last year, above Alvin Kamara, for example. Now, these last 2 guys in this tier, Devon Achane and Bucky Irving, the main reason people are anti these 2 names is because of their size, right? It's this old, worn-out narrative, quite frankly. I'm sorry if you still believe that, but I get so frustrated when I see this and people are like, there's no way you can like Bucky. There's no way you can like Devon Achane. They're overvalued because of their size. There's no way they can be these guys for fantasy football. It's those same people who have Jahmyr Gibbs as their RB1 in fantasy football. Like, what are we talking about? Like, adjust with the times. Adjust with what the NFL now allows and expects from these running backs at that size. Anyway, I think it's ridiculous. Moving on. Tier 4A, okay? I'm going to split Tier 4 into 2 tiers, because I slightly value these first 2 names more than the second. Starting off with Breece Hall at RB10. I'm still figuring out exactly where I sit on Breece Hall right now. I have bought him in a couple leagues. I'm leaning towards a bounce back year in 2025. His first 2 seasons averaging over 16 points per game. Obviously, the 17.1 point per game season we saw in 2023, RB6 in that span on a point per game basis, has never scored less than 15 points per game, despite never having more than 10 touchdowns in a single season. I do think he is prepared to bounce back in a big way this year. They should run the ball so much in New York. The only concern is that like the Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor type of offense where JT doesn't get many targets? Because Breece has really thrived on targets. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. At 11, speaking of the devil, Jonathan Taylor. Great guy, actually, not the devil. But for the majority of the year, he was fine. You know, I owned him in the Flock League. I had him in a couple leagues. He was fine. You know, didn't really know if you were going to get 5 points from him or 15 for most of the game. But then he just flipped a switch in the playoffs and he went absolute sicko mode. All right. We're talking about from weeks 1 to 15 versus weeks 16 to 18. You'll see his yards per attempt in the playoffs, 5.5, 33.7 touches from week 16 to 18, 178 yards, almost 31 fantasy points per game. But outside of that span, he was difficult to trust week in, week out. Of course, you were going to put them in there in a Dynasty league, but there were plenty of scenarios where he was not trustworthy because he didn't get many targets with Anthony Richardson being the quarterback. I'm just trusting on the talent. I'm trusting on the pedigree there. All right, at 4B, we're talking Chase Brown here at 12th overall. He was a fantasy superstar from week 9 onwards. With Dynasty rankings, we try at the running back position to not think too far ahead, right? Because if you're thinking too far ahead, you know, you're going to miss out on a player that can help you win championships. And I think Chase Brown could be that name. Yes, I still think he could be replaceable in the future, but I definitely think he can win you a championship this year. From week 9 onwards, after that Zach Moss injury, he was 7th in carries, 2nd in targets, 4th in touches per game, and 3rd in fantasy points per game. He was an RB5 in that span, and he averaged more points per game from week 9 to 17 than Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Achane, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. Don't sleep on Chase Brown this year. Josh Jacobs, just a steady veteran producer. I think he's a little bit undervalued in the Dynasty community. In fact, I can't really wrap my head around the confidence the community has in a Jonathan Taylor and the disgust they have for Josh Jacobs. They're only like a year apart, not even a year. I really can't wrap my head around it. Both have long-term contracts. You know, Jacobs on a better offense. I think Jacobs, you know, these type of running backs in Green Bay, they start to kind of really be more valuable as the season gets colder and colder, as weird as that is. So they're kind of primed to win your league, but I don't really understand that disconnect. Anyway, Kyren Williams here at 14th. Not gonna lie, a little bit concerning that this team has brought in a running back each of the last 2 years, and Blake Corum and in Jarquez Hunter this year. I love Jarquez Hunter. That is my guy in this class. So a little bit concerning. Does that tell us that they desperately want to relieve Kyren Williams of this large workload, because if you look at Kyren Williams last year, he was not very efficient. He averaged 4.1 yards per carry. He just thrived on touches. So if those touches are if they're ever a question mark, then there may be a lack of upside with Kyren Williams. We'll have to monitor that. But of course, if this time next year they give him a contract extension, we can put all that to rest. Speaking of contract extensions, James Cook, at the time of recording this, they have not given him an extension. It was reported that he is looking to get $15 million per year on his Instagram Live. Apparently he said that, which I guess that's the way players do it nowadays, right? Look, $15 million per year. I don't think he's going to get that. If that's what he's looking for, there might be a longer holdout than we anticipate. There are only 3 running backs in the NFL averaging over $15 million per year. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Derrick Henry. That's it. And I love you, James Cook, but you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. You're a great player. Just my opinion. I don't think you're worth $15 million to a team. Maybe he sits somewhere in between 10 to 12. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't see the Bills kind of in the prime of Josh Allen not extending James Cook in some fashion. If you want an in-depth breakdown of your team with customized trade targets, players to buy, sell, hold, then get your team playbook today by either becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND or by going directly to the Flock store, regardless of what promo code you're on. And if you want it done live, make sure you get the live tier. Those links are in the pinned comment. At 16, this might be a surprise, but RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey, yes, we have him this high. I have fallen more and more in love with RJ Harvey since the NFL draft, and obviously I loved him pre-draft. Didn't expect him to go day 2, but it is great hit rate, 71% for day 2 running backs, round 2 specifically. But the reason I'm falling more and more in love with him is because Sean Payton has fallen in love with him. Before RJ Harvey, Sean Payton has only drafted a running back 3 times before day 3 of the NFL draft. Those 3 times, Reggie Bush in 2006, Mark Ingram in 2011, and Alvin Kamara in 2017. Those 3 running backs before Harvey combined to reach 8 Pro Bowls and 5 All-Pro selections. There's literally no one in this backfield that concerns me for touches for RJ Harvey. He's a good pass catcher, and Sean Payton has fallen in love with him. I think we could all be ranking RJ Harvey easily as a top 10 running back this time next year. At 17, let's talk Ken Walker. Man, I'll be honest with you guys. I have no idea where I should be standing on Ken Walker. In 2024, he averaged 16.5 points per game, was pretty good, but it just feels like there's like boom bust potential with him. We've heard rumors that Seattle could be looking to move on from one of these 2 running backs in Charbonnet and Ken Walker. If they do trade him at some point in the future, will he have the same role that he has in Seattle? It's just a little bit confusing. I also think Charbonnet's a good running back. It's another season with a new offensive coordinator where we have to kind of digest how do they view this backfield. But I do think he's worthy of being in this, tier number 4 with these other names. All right, at tier 6, this we'll talk about another running back here, rookie, Caleb Johnson. Loved Caleb Johnson, loved him pre-draft. Was honestly surprised that he fell to round 3. He will be the perfect fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Black and gold, he gets to stay in black and gold from Iowa to Pittsburgh. However, round 3 hit rate, I do have to say it is a little bit more muddy than round 2. You go from a 71% hit rate, 70.8 to be exact, to a 50% hit rate in round 3. I also think Jaylen Warren is going to be heavily involved. And if you look at this offense in Pittsburgh, I just think RJ Harvey has a massive upper hand over Caleb Johnson in the next 2 years. Who the hell is the quarterback for Pittsburgh? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Maybe. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't that great for Breece Hall as far as like facilitating an offense. How good is this offense going to be in Pittsburgh? Genuine question. How good is it going to be? Because right now I just can't wrap my head around how they're going to extend drives. Yes, DK Metcalf is there. Is Mason Rudolph going to start for them? Is it going to be Will Howard, the rookie? There's just not many weapons around there. And also, I don't know how much I want to be involved in an offense led by Arthur Smith, but I am betting long-term on a player I love in Caleb Johnson. That's why I put the respect on his name, putting him top 18. At 19, Chuba Hubbard, which has been our favorite buy low of the entire offseason. I can't wrap my head around why Chuba Hubbard is not getting the same respect that like the James Cooks are, the Ken Walkers are, right? The Kyren Williams are. The Chase Browns are. I don't understand why Chuba doesn't get that same respect. He literally just dominated for this team. right? And then they gave him a contract extension. Jonathan Brooks is going to be out the entirety of this season. Sure, they brought in Rico Dowdle. I couldn't care less, but we're talking about a name in Chuba Hubbard who averaged 16.1 points per game. I mean, he averaged more points per game than Chase Brown did last year, than David Montgomery did. He averaged more points per game than Breece Hall, than Bucky Irving, than Aaron Jones. I mean, what are we doing not putting respect on Chuba's name? I don't get it, but I think they'll continue to build their run game around him. At 20 and 21, two veterans, CMC, Derrick Henry. Let's jump into tier 7 here. I'm going to go through these last couple tiers a little more quickly. But in tier 7, let's kind of split it into two sections. The vets that you know you can count on, but their time is coming, and the unproven guys, right? So those vets would be Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, James Conner. These 4 guys, you kind of ride them until the wheels fall off. Right now, if you're a contender, you put them in there as your RB2, and you continually kind of win these weeks until they can't do it anymore. Now, beyond that, from about RB26 onwards, we have a bunch of unproven names like Cam Scatterbo, who I really love. I personally believe that he will lead the Giants in carries in year number 1. I know that not everybody agrees with me there. I love Tyrone Tracy just as much as you guys do, but I believe he is kind of built different to carry that workload. Right after that, Trey Benson, who I think should break out here in year number 2. He should have plenty of more opportunities the way this coaching staff is speaking about that running back room. Right after that, Zach Charbonnet, who, you know, he's in this kind of group of these unproven names, but he's already actually proven himself, if we're honest. In the past 2 years, if you look at the right side here, out of split, that is without Ken Walker, a.k.a. Zach Charbonnet starts, he's averaging about 17.7 points per game. Is there another NFL team out there that is seeing Zach Charbonnet and saying, he could be our starter, why is he not starting? Let's go trade for him, right? At 29, Bashul Tutin, who I know all of Twitter is telling you his career is over because he fumbled in OTAs. I find it hilarious how quickly you guys switch up on a player. He's going to be okay. Just calm down. At number 30, a last veteran in this tier, Isaiah Pacheco, who I do think has a chance to bounce back and be a nice contributor as an RB2 for your dynasty rosters. All right, in tier 8, mostly veterans that I think you can start, but they're a ticking time bomb, right? Brian Robinson, I think a ticking time bomb. Sure, starter for now, but he could easily lose his job. He was so inefficient about week 8 onwards last year. DeAndre Swift, one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL last year. Can he be revived by Ben Johnson? Maybe, but is he just a Band-Aid? Most likely. Tyrone Tracy, love the player. Wish he would hold on to the ball. Let's see what he can do in year number 2 with Cam Scatterbo. It'll be a nice dynamic backfield. Aaron Jones, how long? How much more tread on the tires do we have? Tony Pollard, same thing. They actually have said that they want to limit his workload, give Tajay more of the workload. That's concerning if you're relying on him as an RB2. And then at 36, Jordan Mason, who I think is one of the most disrespected running backs in Dynasty football right now. I would not be surprised if he led the Vikings in rushing yards in 2025. I've said that many times on this channel. And the last tier we'll talk about here, maybe a little preview to a video I'll do next week, Tank Bigsby. This might shock some of you guys at 37. All I will say is there's a video coming up with Tank Bigsby involved, probably this time next week, around there. I think he's one of the most disrespected running backs in Dynasty right now. Everybody is talking about Travis Etienne, Bashul Tutin, and nobody is even considering if Tank Bigsby is going to be the starter for this team. Meanwhile, he led the team in carries last year, was way more efficient than Travis Etienne. It wasn't even close in literally every metric you want to look at. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Javonte Williams, Jaden Blue, that Cowboys backfield, one of those two guys could be relevant to your roster. The reality is both could be irrelevant to your roster. So, we'll wait and see there. Travis Etienne, I got in trouble this week for releasing a video saying that I thought he was cooked. Didn't realize there was that many Travis Etienne truthers out there, by the way. Shout out to you guys for coming out of the woodworks. Yeah, he was awful last year on every efficiency metric. People, there was one comment on my video last video where people were like, wow, Travis Etienne had one bad season, now everybody hates him. It's like, okay, he had one good season where he thrived on touches. He was top 2 in touches per game amongst running backs, but he was completely inefficient. So how do you define good? Because if you only define good by fantasy points, where he had 16 points per game that one good season, then sure, he was good. But the reality is this team, how good he was, basically replaced him the next year with Tank Bigsby, who had more carries the next year. I don't know. I don't really know what we're talking about at this point. But anyway, we've got Najee Harris at 41, Ramondre, Rashad, Isaac Arendo, I think has a lot of upside there. Jaylen Warren at 45. Could have added Jalen Wright in here as well, by the way. There's a lot of hype for him coming out of camp right now for Miami, but there are probably 15 to 20 other names I could have fit into tier 9. At the end of the day, the video has to stop at some point. So shout out to my editor.
Designated wham.
I am Manor! Mind your manners! What a catch! That'll make your Sports Center top 10.
For you know, working to make this video look fantastic. I appreciate y'all for being here with us. Short and sweet. Try to keep it short and sweet. I know your time is valuable. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And of course, I would love for you to comment down below, but you know, be respectful when you do so. I always love going back and forth with our comment section when it's respectful. But when people say, you're a dumbass or a piss poor take, someone said last time, or, you know, basically just degrading me because they have a different opinion than me, probably not going to get a great response, right? But if you are respectful, I have no problems in having a nice conversation together. But appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button and show some love. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Nothing but love. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.